Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media here, and we are joined once again by one of our favorite guests here at WHAM, Mr. David Morgan of the Morgan Report, and of course we're going to talk about the Lode project in a bit because it's very interesting and I think people need to hear about it. But I want to first talk about a lot of big news in gold recently. Obviously we've seen gold peak, a lot of people are talking about it, most of them don't know what they're talking about, and at the same time something very historic is happening, and that is that we are seeing for the first time in I don't know how long about a 50-50 cut between bank ownership and government ownership of gold, and then individual ownership, private ownership of gold. And I find this very interesting because we hear a lot of people talking about how much gold the banks and the governments own around the world, and it's a big warning call, but it seems to be going in the opposite direction of what a lot of people are, I guess, fear-mongering about. So can you go a little bit into what that means for gold and what that means for silver?
Sure. Well, I think the number one thing, and this is my take, is that money is power, and money is used today as a control mechanism, and the real money is gold. And so if you buy into that premise, you don't have to. Regardless of that, the fact is that for the first time in history, gold is usually held by the upper class and the banks. And for the first time in history, it's about a 50-50 split, as you said, Josh. We have about half of the gold in the world is held by private individuals, and that's the first time in recorded history that that's taken place. So even though the other half is owned by the banking institutions primarily, more is owned by the people than ever before.
And so let's carry that over a bit to silver, because I don't hear a lot of people talking about, the governments owning huge sums of silver. What is the story with silver regarding something like private ownership versus something like the government ownership of silver?
Well, if you go back to the Great Depression, when it started in 1929, what you'll find is that the only nation state that did well during the beginning of the Great Depression was China, because China was still on a silver standard. So they were pretty much exempt from what was going on in the rest of the world. However, later on in the Depression, but a few years later, the Pittman Act was enacted in the United States, and this repriced the gold, and it really devastated the Chinese economy. So they were pretty much forced off the silver standard in 1935. To get to the heart of your question is that the monetary system has really devalued silver in 1873 officially in the United States, 1935 for China, as I just mentioned. And so it really has been a people's money only from that point forward. There's really no nation state that has a cachet of silver today. You had a pretty good sized buildup in the United States after the Great Depression, but that was basically thrown out under several circumstances, primarily Paul Volcker, who really sold most of the silver of the nation state at 92 cents an ounce when the monetary value is $1.29.
Well, and let's kind of get into something that I mentioned briefly at the very beginning there, was that we have seen a rather large jump in the price of gold recently. I see all sorts of television stations talking about it, but it's usually people that have absolutely no idea what they are saying, and they're making real speculative, they're giving their opinion and passing it off as fact. But, I mean, the fact of the matter is we're not exactly sure what's going to happen next. We just know we can look back at history. But from your perspective, seeing kind of this leap in the price of gold, what do you think is happening right now? Is there a change of the guard, or is it just another, dead cat bounce?
Hard to say. I really think that it's the beginning of the next leg up. And the reason I say that is going back to this last bull market. I mean, actually the one we're currently in, we've been in like a bear market within a major bull market now for several years. We saw gold take off in 2000. It actually led silver for three and a half years before silver finally started up. So we've seen gold bottom December 2015, 3.5 years. We are where we are today. It's breached the $1,300 level for the fourth time this year. It's holding it. It's going to approach, or has approached, the $1,350-60 level, which is imperative that it break through. And this is the first time in 6 years that it's done that. It's 6 times over the last 6 years. It's been a while since we've been breached. So once that's accomplished, and I believe it will be this year, that is technically a breakout. And once that takes place, you'll probably see silver start to come up. So it's actually very similar in my thinking to what we saw in the early beginning of this major bull market. The The good news is that it's the third leg up. The third leg up is usually the most powerful, short-lived leg. Remember, I'm pretty famous for saying 90% of the move comes in the last 10% of the time. If I'm right, then you might look at it as we're going to get a huge move up in both of the metals over, let's say, a 2-year period, something like that.
Well, it's very interesting, and also it's hard not to notice a gold-silver ratio and the significance of that. Obviously, it's a controversial subject, but nonetheless, you look at how it has seemingly a predicted economic crisis at the same time as a big bull runs in things like gold and silver, especially silver. Can you go a little bit into what that seems to signify right now? Because we are in a time where we're seeing the gold-silver ratio meet a peak that we've seen many times before, but I don't think at the same at the level that we're currently seeing it at. Can you go into that a little bit?
Sure. If you look at a long history of the gold-silver ratio, what you find is the natural ratio right now is 9-1. Early on in the 12th century, 13th century, it was around 12-1. And that's where it traded, because they both had the exact same function, money. Most places in the world were a bimetallic standard, gold and silver. You fast forward to the Bank of England going off the gold standard and having a big crisis, Sir Isaac Newton putting back on the gold standard, and they monetized silver at about 15.5 ounces per gold ounce. Wrong thing to do. Let the market determine it. Don't determine it. But they did. So that's also what I consider the monetary ratio. It's only been in the last 150 years where you see that the gold-silver ratio has been above 16-1. And, of course, that's our lifetime and then some. But nonetheless, this is where the ratio has been skewed because silver was demonetized. So with its function, getting acquainted to the monetary side of silver, which some very few acknowledge, but it exists. Once that monetary demand or investment demand, you could call it, comes back in the silver market, is what will take it higher. And since it's so underpriced relative to everything, including gold, I think the run to silver eventually will be rather spectacular.
Well, and we were talking a bit about the private ownership of gold and private ownership of silver. Can you go into Lode a bit? Because I think this is a very interesting segue to this subject matter and how people can protect their wealth. And obviously morphing, cryptocurrency and gold and silver, it's a divisive issue because some people only want gold and silver, some people only want cryptocurrency. And I always say, why not both? But can you go into Lode a little bit?
Well, I have the school that, there's two theories of money. I won't even explain them, but I'm one of specie money, commodity money. That's kind of what history teaches us. And here's the cryptocurrency that's backed by silver. So I'm not that favorable to most cryptos that are unbacked, but I am favorable to ones that are backed. And they don't have to be backed by silver or gold. They can be backed by tea or coffee or lumber or I don't care. So this is something that's really been money forever, longer really than gold. And it's, of course, I'm biased, as everyone knows who knows me. But nonetheless, I think it's a great way to integrate the modern technologies into the silver market and give the best of both worlds. That's how I see it.
So where can people find more information on Lode and, of course, the work that you do?
Well, for me, it's themorganreport.com. Get on our free email list. For Lode, it's AG, which is the symbol for silver, ag.lode, LOD.one. That's the URL. Go there and get our newsletter for free. Learn more about it. You don't need to commit, but I think it's really good, especially for, let's say, your age group, Josh, that are, the up-and-comers, the thinkers, going to replace those gray hairs eventually, and become more educated. I'm a lifelong learner. I know you are or will be, and it's really interesting to see where this could go because I'm all for competing currency. I'm not saying like you. It's not, it doesn't have to be crypto or just precious metals. Maybe there's a third leg out there that we don't even know of right now that's even better. I don't know, but I'm certainly open-minded to it.
Well, I'm already getting lots of gray hair, so we'll see about that. But with that said, we're entering into a new age of money and utilizing one of the oldest forms of money and entering into that new age. I think it's going to be, there's so much potential, there's so much opportunity. And again, everyone should be doing their own due diligence and, of course, doing whatever they can to protect their wealth and purchasing power. That's important. You got to be responsible, folks. So always educate yourself on this subject. Money is incredibly important to understand. And if you don't understand money, well, someone else does, and unfortunately, if you don't have control over your money, someone else has control over you in the end. So you got to do whatever you can to educate yourself and make sure that you sustain your wealth, purchasing power, and that as well for your family. It's very important. So thank you so much for going into this with us, and we'll definitely be talking with you again sometime soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Jess. pleasure. Thanks.
Like what you see here, OM, don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated, especially as we are so heavily demonetized and censored by YouTube as these guys come in and flag all of our content as hate speech. The shadow banning is getting really bad, guys. Also, check our Bitcoin address right here on the screen or in the description below. We really appreciate it. And of course, check us out at the Red Pill Expo 2019. Of course, the great G. Edward Griffin and so many other incredible speakers will be there. Our link for that is below as well. And we cannot forget Mike Maloney's goldsilver.com, which you can also find in the description. One of the greatest market and monetary historians out there. We really encourage everyone to check that out. But until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
I'm sure you have already changed people's minds in your young age because you're involved, and I like that.